Hey everybody, welcome to Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. My name is Reed with Best Made Videos. We are a wedding videography company based out of West Seattle, Washington, and I'm excited today to be joined on a Friday, I guess, going into the weekend with Tiffany Penton of Sweet Pea Beauty. Thank you so much for coming by today, coming to the house and doing this in person. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and a little bit about what you do.
Thanks for having me. I'm Tiffany. I am the owner of Sweet Pea Beauty, which has two different legs. There is a beauty bar in downtown Renton where we do makeup, waxing, lashes, and skincare. And then there's the wedding side where we do wedding hair and makeup.
And you guys are based in Renton, right? So easy enough to get around and
Yes.
convenient, especially to come today, right?
Yeah, oh, for sure.
And so how did you kind of get involved in all this? I know on your website, we were talking off mic too, varied past of, careers and everything else. Were you someone that grew up in an early age wanting to be involved in the beauty industry, or how did this come about?
No, I was totally not into makeup. I had all my friends do makeup for me for dances, and they all plucked my eyebrows. I was not into this at all. So I was working in the mortgage industry, and then 2008 happened and I was out of a career essentially. So started looking around and kind of just rethinking what I wanted to do. And the first thing that came to mind is I really like to shop at Nordstrom, and I just wanted a discount. So so I applied and got an interview in the beauty at a beauty counter, and that's kind of where it started. I fell in love with makeup. I don't know how I passed my interview because I knew nothing.
But you sweet talked it nonetheless, and you got in.
Yes.
And is it, the technical stuff? Is it interacting with clients? The personal, what do you enjoy most about it?
I think it's the clients. I really like to have that personal touch with them and have that connection, that personal connection. So yeah, that's probably what drives me to go on to the next day.
And so you're at Nordstrom's, you're doing the makeup stuff there. When was the idea that I'm going to do, my own thing? I'm going to branch out and kind of establish that.
It was kind of like it was never really the plan ultimately. I just really liked to work with the normal people, not the people that wanted the crazy makeup. And so naturally, I got a lot of brides, and I immediately started liking it and started doing weddings way too early. I charged $50 for my first wedding, and she was happy, but looking back, that was not something that I probably should have done so early, but really liked it. The problem is in retail, it's really hard to do weddings because you're working on the weekends. And back then, Nordstrom did not want you to do any weddings or any freelance because they wanted you to promote them. So it was always really low key if I did a wedding. And so eventually just decided go back to the corporate world and do weddings on the side on the weekends.
And so then now, you have, a team and people, and you were interviewing before you came. So how did you kind of get now to where we are today?
So I was doing weddings and really started liking it, and started, I remember my first season of really focusing on weddings. I think I booked like 16 in one summer, and that was like such an accomplishment. And then I had my first son and went back to the corporate world, and I was commuting to downtown Seattle from Renton, and it was just such a long commute, and I hated it and didn't hate the job, but just hated being away so much. So makeup was such a passion of mine. So I was trying to think like, how am I going to do a Monday through Friday gig with this? Since there's, weddings are Tuesdays sometimes, but very rare. So decided to go to aesthetic school, finished that, loved that, and then got my master aesthetic license. And started slowly working in the medical side of aesthetics and doing like laser hair removal, and quickly decided that was not for me. I'd always dabbled in lashes during school, and just decided to go for it and started doing lash extensions all the time. Clients started growing. I was renting a little place in the Euro Institute, which is a school that I went to. And that's kind of where it started.
It just kind of blew up from there.
Yeah.
Looking back on, it's always funny. Like you said, the first one you did, and the bride was happy. But looking back, isn't it crazy? Looking back at those first couple years and being like, "Wow, I really lucked out, kind of getting through." I know I kind of look back at my stuff, right, and you're like, "Wow, I'm really like." It's good to kind of get those growing pains out of the way, and sometimes you look back and it's a little scary.
Oh, totally, totally. But at the same time, I try to remember that for people that are starting out, and know that, my price range is very different from someone that's starting out, and really want to help people that want to go for this and be a mentor, so that they don't feel like, they're not able to get into the industry, because it can kind of be a hard industry to get into.
Yeah, it's so tough. And I mean, all the time with, people are always trying to start out and, pricing and trying to undercut, whether it's intentional or not. And it is tough. I mean, it was tough, 6, 7 years ago for me, and however long, for you. And even now, it's always, it's that fine line between wanting to kind of make sure the industry stays where it is and not,
Oh, totally. And I think especially with hair and makeup, it's easy to be undercut. You don't have to have a license to be a makeup artist. You can wake up and just start doing it. And a lot of hairstylists, they're not licensed, and same thing. Although at Sweet Pea, anyone that does hair is going to be a licensed cosmetologist, because I think that's super important to be licensed with the state and insured, and truly is going to be someone that the bride can trust and knows what they're doing.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that because, reading on your site and, everything you've gone through and all your certifications and stuff. And like, it's such kind of the Wild West with makeup and hair, and people have licenses and don't, and certifications. And like, why do you tell, the brides and stuff that work for you, how do you kind of sell the importance of that, the legitimacy and kind of the reputableness of kind of having that stuff locked down?
I just I put it all out there on the table. I think that, because there are so many people that just have worked at a makeup counter, and turn themselves into a hairstylist, or even vice versa. They're a hairstylist and they turn themselves into a makeup artist. I think that although there are some talented people that can do it, in general, I think that you are going to be stronger at one, and your timing is going to be solid in one. And just kind of letting the bride know that the cool thing about booking with Sweet Pea is that you're going to get a licensed esthetician to do your makeup, and then a licensed cosmetologist to do your hair. And the reasons why are, not only does the state recognize that these people know what they're doing, but we are truly good at our craft, and we're not converting into something that that the industry just needs.
Because it's so tough, because we see all the time, like, hey, I had someone and they canceled, or last minute. And it's always people that aren't, set up. And it's always like some friend of someone that was going to do it, and just not having all the proper stuff, right?
Oh, yeah, it's so true. I think that's kind of an uphill battle in our industry. And I think probably just in the wedding world in general. I've heard horror stories about, photographers, videographers not showing up. And so just also getting that recognition, or that just the information out there to brides that, there are people out there that have websites. There are people out there that have contracts. There are people out there that do this for a living. And that's who you want to book. Weddings are something that you charge for more. And there's a lot of vendors out there that do it only for that reason. And then there's vendors out there that do it because they truly love weddings. And that's the vendor that you should hire for your wedding.
What do you wish people knew more about in terms of what you guys do, or what do you wish you find yourself like educating people about, that you wish people ask more about?
Sweet Pea is very full service. So when I opened up the store in downtown Renton, you can do everything from, lashes to skin prep for your wedding day. Makeup, we do lots of classes. You can get your hair done by the hairstylist at their salon. There's so many different things that you can do at Sweet Pea that other companies don't offer. And not to say that one is better than the other, but it's very full service. So for the bride that's super busy or the bride that stresses out easily, this is such a easy option. And then on top of that, we have a history of being successful, and we have lots of other, people that can talk about, how well we do and the personal touch that we give.
One thing that we talk a lot about with like hair and makeup artists, especially, is, making sure people find the right one, and, like booking time right. Like people think like, oh, that's something that I can get later on, and not booking the stuff far enough in advance. Is that something that you have to educate people about too, making sure that, someone like you that might be more in demand because of just the services you offer?
Yeah, for sure. That's something that in the contract, we get that information right away as to like, what time do you need to start? Who is your photographer? And those two pieces of information, I think, are what I go off of for my morning of. And I create a morning of timeline for the bride and build in like time for them to eat. And I build in time for them to get in their dress and build in time for them to take a break. And I think that a lot of times they don't realize that, if they need to be ready at noon, we probably are going to need to start at like 5 or 6. And that's such a shocking time for them, but it goes by so fast. So being able to break it down and say, if you need to be ready by this time, you need to give yourself 30 minutes to get into your dress, because the videographer, the photographer, they're going to want you to do that slowly to get all the shots. And then, kind of working backwards. And then it all of a sudden makes sense. Like, oh yeah, I do have, 7 bridesmaids and a mom and me. And it does take, X amount of time per person. So I think that that's like a huge piece that a lot of brides don't know. And they shouldn't, because they've never done this most of the time.
It's so funny. We had a wedding this year, and she's like, oh, she was kind of pretty easygoing. She's like, oh, I'm just gonna like 5 minutes, I'll put my dress on, whatever. And we're running late, and she gets, and it not only was like a corseted like outside, but it was like a corseted inside too.
Yeah.
And I was like, this thing's gonna take
forever.
it's gonna take like 40 minutes to put, and like people just don't. It's crazy about.
Yeah, you don't think about it, and the only time that she's probably put her dress on is like the 2 or 3 times when she tried on the dress and then it was too big, so it wasn't really actually doing it. And then the fittings and someone that knows what they're doing are putting it on. So yeah, there's a lot of things that they just don't know to consider. And I try to be that resource for them. So that they can kind of remember or understand how quick things go.
Do you find like you, we were talking off mic about some of the weddings we had worked together, and you talk about the connection you have with clients. Do you find that you are helping them, give them a lot of advice and stuff, and helping them with things maybe they weren't thinking about? It could be just even like, I don't know, showering the night before so you're clean to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but do you find like that you have a good connection, obviously, with your brides, and then you can kind of take it from there?
Yeah, for sure. I tell brides, there's always a question that they ask, when we first have our initial like phone conversation after emailing, and they always say like, what am I missing? Is there a question that I should be asking that I'm not? And I always just say, think about who you're connecting with, and that is who you should hire. So if I'm not that person, that is okay. And I'm more than happy to even try to match you with a better option. Because yes, I do feel like the brides that I work with are like, we turn into your best friends, especially the morning of. I feel like, I often say like, just think of me as your best friend, like whatever you need, if you need a moment. I get emotional with my brides. I've laughed with them. I've cried with them. I've developed these friendships. And then the cool thing with Sweet Pea is a lot of times they do want, lash extensions before their wedding. So that means that we're working together at least a month consistently together. So it's not just the trial run, or, if they need skincare prep, then that means we're doing facials, every 2 to 3 weeks leading up to the wedding. And then we also do a brow wax the week of the wedding. So that's another point where I touch base, like, how are you doing? Any questions? Anything that I should know? So there is a definite bond that I form with my brides. And And it's unique. It's cool. It's, I think about them all the time. If I am driving to like a vacation place that I know they went on their honeymoon or whatever, it's, always something that I feel like I'm close with them for. As far as, helping them with other information that they don't know. I send out an email typically the week of their wedding that just say, it's like the title is like helpful hints, and things like, make sure everyone arrives at the exact same time. Because if you give someone a time, especially a bridesmaid, I can't tell you how many times like, okay, their start time might be 7:00, but we don't need to be ready until noon. They don't want to get their hair and makeup done early because they don't think it's going to last. And they don't know me, they don't have the same relationship with me as the bride does. So, just that simple, like everyone needs to arrive at the same time. So we stay on track. We're not ever, making a bride late. I would rather, if they need to be late because of whatever reason, it's not going to be because of me. And then as far as like the shower before, there is that conversation of like, how does your hair perform the best? Does it perform like a day after you wash it best or the morning of? And that's what we need to do. And that's what we need to plan for. So there's no surprises.
It's so funny. You're talking about like driving and, the vacation places and thinking of brides. Like, I think we think about our couples a lot more than maybe they think that we do,
Oh, yeah.
just in terms of like, reminiscing after or just whatever, like it's that one day. But, for us, it's like so much prep or like afterward. And it's just a lot more, I think that, I don't know if we get enough credit for that.
Oh, totally. But see, that's also the difference between someone who truly loves weddings and someone who's just doing it because you can charge more.
No, because, we've talked a lot with like hair and makeup and photographers, whatever, just having that connection with whatever the vendor type is kind of going into your wedding. I think like a lot of people think, oh, videographer, like they're just like, they don't, like we just do a lot of like bookings on email and stuff, which is great because, it's easier for us, but we're there in the room as much as like the photographer, right? Like all day. And the same with you guys, like you're in the bride's face. Like you really got to make sure that it's someone that you're going to have a good connection with, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's been a hard thing for me to, as I grow, as Sweet Pea grows, to also almost be interviewing the bride as they're interviewing me. And there's been a couple times where I don't feel like it's a good match. And I've had to say that because that's not, no one wants to hurt anyone. But it's your day too as a wedding vendor. And if I'm off, then they're going to feel off. And, if you have that weird vibe, it's just like one person can turn a whole room different. So I think it's super important that that there is that connection with you and your vendors as a bride.
And that's the hardest thing. It's like, wedding vendor starting out where you want to take everything and book every job and then just some ones aren't right.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like I've been super lucky. It's very rare when there's like an off moment. And then at that point, I feel like, well, I have enough rapport with them that I can, talk straight to them and be super honest. And that's like something that I truly try to always be open and honest with everyone about everything, from everything from like the rates to the process to who I am to, even how I'm going to be. I tell the brides like, if I am a little more business day of, it's just because we have a job to do and I don't want to be the reason why you're late. So definitely, if I'm like, okay, your appointment's done, bridesmaid number whatever, let's get this person in. And so I always tell them like, don't feel offended. It's just me doing a job. And like at that point, I think because there is that connection, it's easier. It's easier for them to just get like, oh yeah, that's Tiffany. She's just trying to help.
No, and I was just having a conversation with Dorothy and a couple other vendors kind of lately just about, I always try to feel like I give my clients, like, I always think people are smarter, if they are or not, like I always think people are smarter than they are. And I feel like sometimes nowadays there's a lot of like people trying to book or like language and stuff where it's like, they think that people are dumber or like trying to get more money out of them. And like you said, like I always try to be like very upfront and like very, like we know like exactly what's happening or like, what the expectations are or what it's going to be like. And I feel like sometimes there isn't necessarily that transparency. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think I think a lot of it is that as vendors grow into this, because I think a lot of people in the wedding industry have almost fallen into it. They might have just really liked doing what they do. And so, they did a wedding and then now it's snowballed into whatever it is. But we haven't dreamt of sat there and dreamt about the business plan. It's grown organically. And so as things come up, it's hard to know what the expectation is until it actually happens. And then you're like, well, I didn't like that. I want to change that for next time. So it's cool when you are a little bit more seasoned because this is how it's going to be. And this is how I want to handle these types of things. So it is super important to be transparent. And, I'm like that even with, my travel rate. Like there's a lot of vendors out there that are like, oh, it's $100 to go here. And I'm like, no. It's for us, it's 85 cents per mile. And you can calculate it. You can calculate from point A to point B and then to get us back. So I think it's just something as simple as that. I think brides they see okay, there's a rhyme to everything that they're doing.
Yeah, when you're talking about, the business plans kind of falling, I was at this Snohomish Wedding Guild, whatever meeting last week. We had to film, and there was this guy there that he was visiting, but he was a videographer, and he was asking, we were kind of just shooting the shit, and he's asking me about how'd you get into this, or how do you market, or how do you, and asking for tips and whatever, and he's 23, right? And I'm like, dude, the decisions I've made in the last 10 years, millions, right? I mean,
yeah.
And it's I couldn't even tell you what would work for you or me, or it is just, it's trial and error, just trying to get through and kind of figure it out. I mean, it was just crazy to think because I was 33 and he was 23, and just to think the life's decisions that have been made in that decade,
yeah.
I couldn't even fathom to explain. And if I had 10 years to explain that,
Oh, totally. Yeah. I know. I was talking to a friend and I was talking about this other idea that I had for a business. And she said, isn't this fun? Don't you remember this part of Sweet Pea? And I was like, no, Sweet Pea was very much it just happened. I didn't have that honeymoon period of oh, my business is going to do this and this and this. So yeah, it's and I think that a lot of wedding vendors can probably relate to that.
Well, and so you were saying that working in the mortgage industry in 08, I was in the news industry in 08, and we lost, half our newsroom got laid off in my third week on the job. And so I've always thought this could fail at any moment, right?
Yeah.
It just, it's still never, you're never out of that
right
honeymoon.
Now. Yeah, I totally feel like that. And I've even said that, that was one reason why I went to aesthetic school. Cause I said at one point I'm going to be 50 something and brides are not going to be able to relate to me, as their beauty specialist. So I need to have a backup plan. Hopefully I can, being in this industry, look young for a really long time and ride the wave a little bit longer. But I also understand there is a reality of it will come to an end at one point.
Yeah, I was asked that the other day too from someone, and I thought, man, that's way too early to be thinking about being a 55-year-old wedding videographer.
Yeah.
Hey guys, show us up.
You're gonna have to do retirements.
Yeah, right. I was like, well, maybe I'll just find some young kids that'll work for me. And
yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at with Sweet Pea. I love doing the work right now, but there will be a point where my kids are going to be doing sports or something else on the weekend, and I'm going to want to do that instead of weddings. So yeah, eventually that it will be a bigger version, but I don't want it to ever be so big that I can't have a handle of it. A lot of, on average, Sweet Pea does 50, maybe 60 weddings a year. And I don't want it to ever be anything so big that I don't know my brides. I want it to be something where, even if there are 5 different makeup artists and, 5 different hairstylists, that we still know each and every bride so they get that one-on-one attention.
It's so tough, and it's so easy to just think and wanting to expand. We have me and Matt, we do 2 weddings, whatever at a time. And it's enough. I mean, some weekends, just trying to deal with 2 different sets of circumstances, let alone, if you have, a handful, but it is that this dream of well, I'm going to expand and have all these different people all over the place. And then you're realizing the work I put into one wedding, I'm going to have to split that over a lot and
Oh, yeah.
still hopefully maintain like the same work, like level of client satisfaction.
Totally. And I do think like I see some of the bigger, I think beauty for weddings, we can book a lot of weddings. We can do obviously weekday weddings. We can do multiple weddings on the weekends. There's been days where I've done 4 weddings on a weekend. So it can be done, but for me, it's like, I really, really want my brides to know me, and I really, really want to know them. I want to walk into their bridal suite on their wedding day and remember all of the things that we've talked about. So, doing more than where I'm at now is a little scary. But I don't know if I'll figure out a way to, make it work. But yeah, for sure.
Well, so, because even, we used to, when we were like a lower price point, we would do like a lot of Saturday, Sunday, or like, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And like by Sunday, like where I'm just like, I just feel older now. I'm not really old, but like by Sunday, like I'm dragging.
You're
if
dead.
I had one the day before, one on Friday, like it's just, even just the like, 5 or 6 years, like you just wanting to stay, sharp or personable, not irritable.
Yeah.
It's just hard.
It really is. Well, a wedding it drains you because you're emotionally there for them. You're not only just physically there. You're not just doing the work. You're not just filming. I'm not just doing makeup. I'm really, really invested in these people. So I remember that one of the weddings that we did, I think it was her father-in-law it was her father. He was wearing jeans to the wedding, and she got a call that he's gonna, his pants didn't fit him, so he's just gonna wear jeans. And she obviously was not super happy about that. But that, moment, even though it was just like maybe a 5-minute moment of like sorting through the emotions of like disappointment, frustration, and then like it is what it is. That took a lot out of me, and like it seems like something so small, but that's because I really liked her, and that's because I really felt bad and put myself in her position. So yeah, like I feel super drained after a wedding just because I've been through an entire morning with them.
Well, and it's funny too, because like, we'll do a lot of like corporate stuff, and generally like they're not really that different, but just on like paper level, it looks like our wedding rates are a lot higher than our corporate rates. Whereas if you actually sat and did the hours, it's really not that different. But it's, people go, well, how come it's, this much for you to come film, my conference, and it's this much to go do a wedding? It's like, because it is like, it's a ton more emotional investment, and it's a ton more stress for me. I have a lot more stress making sure a wedding day goes good than like, well, this is like a podium speaker. It's just, you know what I mean? It's
Totally.
Just different levels of like, not different levels of like investment, but just different feelings of emotion. I don't know, going into it.
Totally. But explaining that to someone, explaining that to a bride and groom is really hard without offending them. So yeah, I know I get that question a lot because my rates are a little bit higher. And usually when that's kind of where the conversation goes, I'm just like, I will find you someone that might be a lower price point. But I'm not, I can explain only to a certain extent of like why I am the price point that I am. But if you don't get it, then that's totally fine. I'm just not your vendor.
Yeah. And even just with other videographers, I'm like looking at sites and stuff. Yeah. You just try to put as much information as you can out. And if it's going to boil down to that. And we do a lot of, like I'll send, what do you call it? Like a lost sale survey. Like where if I like lost a sale, like I'll send like a follow up and be like, hey, can you fill this out and let us know? And like, yeah, if it's price and they're like, hey, this was, $1,500 less. And you're like, well, okay, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I know. I just had that happen. I put a contract out and it was like the retainer fee to book Sweet Pea, which then put me out of the price point. And I'm like, I guess if it's, that I totally get that, I've planned my own wedding and I remember every single dollar going out the window was really, really hard to swallow. But at the same time, like if you value that person to put a dollar amount on like, oh, you're over by, $20, I can't book you now. We're just not the best match.
I will say though, you can talk with, a bunch of vendors and get quotes and stuff. Like by the time that people are like, hey, I'm ready to go to contract. And then if I send it, like if I put everything in the system and send everything over, that's where I get kind of like draw the line. Like you can talk with me and I'll email you back and forth, but like it's once you send all the contracts and put everything in the thing. And then they're like,
Oh,
well,
just
I don't
kidding.
really know now. And you're like, God, now I got to go through and backtrack. So that's like, just like for brides and grooms, like talk with as many people. Hopefully don't ghost them if you don't want to go with them, but but just once you say you want to go forward with someone,
Yeah, be certain. Yeah, I don't think that they understand, and rightfully so, they shouldn't understand, but like I put a lot of time into the contract.
Yeah.
There's a difference between like just a hair contract, just a makeup contract, both of, hair and makeup. We've probably already talked about specifics, as far as like, I don't know if it's a 2-day wedding versus a one day wedding, or maybe like a fairy ride. I don't know, all of the small details. I spend a lot of time putting the contract together, and thought and excitement, not only the contract, but then I'm like putting it on the spreadsheet and I'm marking off the day. And even though like technically the date isn't booked yet, I'm doing all of the things. And so, yeah, when I put out a contract and then I either don't hear back from them, or they come back and say, I can't afford it, I'm just like, oh my God, that sucks. It's a lot of wasted time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, even we just had a wedding. They canceled, or they're moving it, whatever. And like, it was this crazy, like 4-day thing and all this stuff. And I'm like, I put probably 5 hours just into like figuring out what we're doing and like quoting that and like what are the aspects of this day and how many people would, you know what I mean? Like it's all this time goes into it that's not recouped,
Totally. Well, and that's why I started charging a retainer fee to book Sweet Pea. It's not, a deposit that's taken off of the balance, because of that. Because of that one, there's so much time that goes into booking a bride. And so I can't do that for free for, 20 years. So yeah.
So I wanted to talk about, we've been talking about kind of like managing teams and, booking and stuff. Going from, just doing, hair and makeup and whatever, working at Nordstrom's, where did this, expanding out, managing people, where did that drive come from? Because I mean, it's one, lots of people are just do like hair, makeup, or photography or anything, and just do like, hey, it's just me and I do. Where did that come from to kind of expand out and offer all the different stuff?
Yeah, so that kind of organically happened. So after school, after esthetician school, I started working for a laser clinic and doing all that stuff, and then didn't work out. They actually filed BK, and so then I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? And that's when lashes came into play. At the same time, a friend that I started to get to know at the European or the Euro Institute where I went to school, she said, we have extra space in the back building. Like, would you want to rent a space for a really low cost of rent? And I jumped on that. So then I was inside a skincare school building, got zero business because it's like in the back of a building, but that's kind of how I started. And then after a couple years, they did a reorg and they kicked all of the renters out. There was just, I think at the end, 3 of us. And I'm like, okay, that's it. That's the end of Sweet Pea. I guess I'm just going back to weddings. I got to figure this all out. Maybe I'll work at a salon. I don't know. And I reached out to a friend's husband who like just got into real estate, and I'd just seen her like the morning before I got notification, and I was like, "Can you help me find a space?" In my head, it was just going to be inside another building, like nothing, not what Sweet Pea is. He found me the space that we're in, and toured the next day. And I remember like, okay, so I had just had my second at the time. So I had like, he was probably like 2 or 3 months old. And he was like on the pack in front of me. And then I had a toddler, and we were like touring this place, and the renter who was there before had completely left it like in shambles. Like the walls were black, white, and red. There was garbage everywhere. There were flies everywhere. The building manager was trying to sell me on like, we're going to make it beautiful and all the things, and this is the price. And I'm like, I just went from paying like nothing to now I'm going to be on the street. And so it just like, I just did it. I don't know what it was, I just did it. And from there, things started growing, because I think now I had like a brick and mortar shop and I started making more connections within the city. And at that point, now I had rent. Like now I legit had to make this work, and I signed a 5-year lease. So I guess it was a little bit of that driving, but I don't know. A lot of it is just like things kind of happened. And so now it's like, how big can I make this while still having a good hold of it? The trickiest part, I would say, is that I'm in appointments all day long. So, I'm doing like anywhere from, waxing a ton of lash extensions, lash lifts, all of the beauty things. And I'm in appointments all day long. But at the same time, there's brides emailing me. There's networking things happening. There's just so many different things that I can't. Podcasting. Yeah. And so it's really hard to keep up with it, because I'm not, just like at a store managing it. I'm like, my time is literally with other people during the day. So it's the two legs of the business are awesome, but it is definitely challenging.
Yeah, I think in my ideal world, I would just sit and email all day. But it's tough when you're like you're at a shoot or you're at a thing. You can't. I do think that is where I thrive versus like necessarily the videography aspect of it.
Yeah,
that's good or bad. But it's so tough, and people don't understand like how many different hats it is to juggle.
Oh yeah, totally. I know. I was on the phone with one of my girlfriends the other day, and she goes, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm going to go grab a coffee super fast. And then I have 30 minutes before my first client gets to Sweet Pea. And I'm going to try to do as many things as I can on email." And she goes, "Well, what do you have on email?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I have like 10,000 things." Like if I showed you my inbox, I think most people would probably have a brain aneurysm, because it is a lot.
It's funny. I just went down. My buddy and I went and saw wrestling on Sunday in Portland, and I was like, Monday morning I woke up and he's like, "Oh, like what are you doing? What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm just trying to like catch up. I've been freaking wrestling all night. Like can you shut up for 20 minutes? Can I just like look at my phone?" For sure.
Yeah, you're not just like at wedding shooting and then that's it.
Yeah,
you're literally doing a ton of other things.
What is your favorite aspect of running the business and your least favorite aspect?
I would say my favorite is just kind of being able to control and dream at the same time, and really put it in a direction that I want it to. And learning, like every year I'm able to make it better, and just do things, make the pain points for brides or clients even better, or less of a pain point. The least favorite is I think it's just the stress, of, I am a mom of 2 little kids. I am a wife. We've got so many things going on, and then putting a business on top of that. I'm, the one that for the most part, drops off from school and daycare and then picks up. And so there's a lot of pressure as far as like, I just can't be in all places at all times. And I can't do a lot of networking things, and I can't do as much as I want to do, like stylized shoots. I just can't do it because I'm busy doing other things. So that pressure is a lot. It drives me, and it makes me very particular, and it makes me prioritize pretty well. But it is that stress is kind of sucks, because I do also watch other businesses in the beauty industry just grow, because they just have a different lifestyle, and it's cool to watch them grow. But at the same time, I'm just like, gosh, I wonder where Sweet Pea would be if I just had more time.
Oh, it's crazy. I work with so many like husband-wife photo teams, and I'm just like, I don't know how you guys do it, having to balance out. And especially like, where if like they're both at a wedding, let alone like one being in whatever, but like, especially when I don't even understand like how you guys manage that.
Oh yeah, for sure. But it's cool. That's really cool to see a husband and wife team work together. But yeah, it's different.
And just, like managing, expectations of like being just prompt with communication for brides and stuff. And it's like, because everyone wants, like, everyone's wedding is their wedding, or everybody's thing is their thing. And so like managing that too, where like you're communicating with them, but also like setting like boundaries or whatever, is important.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. And also I think just knowing that you will figure it out, but you might just take a little bit of a detour for sure.
What keeps you excited to come in every day? You talk about everything really excited, and you obviously have a joy for what you do. What makes every day fresh and exciting?
I think it's the people, and that connection that I have. I feel like I don't hang out with my friends as much. And, I still, text and call every once in a while, but there's not that girls' night for dinner or whatever. And I think it's because I feel like I'm constantly hanging out with my friends that are clients. And I just, really, want to do right by them. And I really don't want to disappoint them. And so that is what I think makes me think like, oh, I knew she was frustrated at this for this thing. So how can I make that better next time? And if I look at my clients more as friends, it's easier to fix and do better.
It's tough. Dorothy makes fun of me a lot for not having this many friends, but then we'll go to I don't know, some sort of event. And
everyone.
Yeah. And so I'm like, that's why, because it's the time, it's that time I'm invested in that versus, right or wrong, but we're still friends with, you're friends with the vendors.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I like the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally get that.
Yeah. We were having a conversation last night where she was like, I don't know why she was asking about Instagram, and she only follows, she always gets the, you're all caught up.
Oh,
right. Because she only follows and I'm like, I've never seen that ever, just because I follow just so many different planners and stuff and whatever. Yeah. And it was trying to explain to her why. She's like, why do you follow so many people? And I'm like, well, because it's a lot of vendors and planners and people that have been on the podcast and brides and you know what I mean? But it's just trying to explain it. She's like, oh, I just read Instagram till I get caught up and then I'm done.
Oh yeah. It's such a different way of looking at social media when you're doing it personal versus business. Yeah, for sure. I've caught up on my personal Instagram, but never on the business. So yeah, there's a big difference.
Yeah. Before we let you go, I always ask people, what do you wish more people knew about you or your business, or what do you're on the Get to Know Your Wedding Pro podcast. You're here talking about yourself. What do you wish more people knew about you or what you do?
I think if more brides bought into the idea of kind of going with a one-stop shop, I think it helps them in so many different ways. Their makeup will take you so far. Makeup can cover whatever, but if you come on your wedding day and you have amazing skin and you're glowing within, it's so much different. Or that small fear of okay, I'm going to wear a strip false lash, but if I cry, ideally it won't pop up, but it could pop up. So, fixing that problem of just well, now I have lash extensions, and then I also have the skincare part. I think that is super important, that brides, I kind of wonder if they think it's just dollar signs adding up, but really it's to help them on their day and feel the best version of themselves. That way it shows better on camera and film, because that's going to be how you're going to remember the day. And that's what I say when people are kind of teetering with the idea of should I do hair and makeup or not? Well, if you're going to spend a lot of money on the pictures and the video, you should look good in them. And all of the co-stars should look good in them too. So that's including bridesmaids, parents, all of the things. So I would say that's my biggest thing that I want brides to know. It's not trying to charge more. It's legit, I want you to be the best version of you.
And do you feel like you guys, I guess we didn't really get into that just in terms of your style, and you guys just kind of want to accentuate, or how you kind of describe the style that you guys try to strive for with your salon?
We're pretty natural. Not to say that we can't swing the other way and do something super dramatic and Instagrammy. But I think I get a lot of brides that want more of a natural look. And hair, we're kind of in this zone of everyone wants it to look it's so effortless. And so that's where the natural is coming in, the bohemian hair with the big curls and the loose braids and all that stuff. And so I think that it's probably where we land, but we've definitely done a year ago, I had a wedding anniversary come up, and the bride on around this time last year, she wanted like full glam. So that's always kind of fun to do as well.
Yeah, step out of the, not comfort zone, but just step out of the norm a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
You've got a busy day and kids and nap schedules, or and like everyone's on break this week and trying to figure it out. But I really appreciate, you taking the time to come on and talk and just tell us a little bit about your business.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
If people want to learn more about you and what you guys do and your services and your storefront and everything, where would you have them check out?
Website is Sweet Pea Beauty Makeup, sweetpeabeauty.com. And Instagram is sweetpea_beauty.
Perfect. Thank you so much. If you're like Tiffany and you're interested in coming on the podcast, you can go to www.bestmadevideos.com/podcast guest. That's a nice, easy questionnaire to fill out to get you on. And thanks again. This has been another episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. Check back next week for another wedding planner interview. Thanks so much.
Bye.